All right.
All right, it's episode 1. Let's talk movies, working title.
Working title.
So today's topic will be comfort films. But first, we want to start with, what have you been watching recently?
Sure.
I'm Nathan. This is Chandler.
How we doing? So, if we're going to go ahead and jump right into what we've been watching recently, I have a couple good picks. Recently watched Bringing Out the Dead, Martin Scorsese's very underrated 1999 psychological thriller, I suppose you could say. It's pretty unhinged for Scorsese in terms of a lot of the shots he does and a lot of just some of the scenes and the visuals. Feels very drug fueled, very amped up.
Written by
Paul Schrader. Yeah. So it's definitely kind of a Taxi Driver pseudo sequel, if you will, or kind of a sister film to that, because It's about Nick Cage being an ambulance driver on an overnight shift, paramedic, and he is tormented by all the lives he's unable to save. And obviously, with all Scorsese, lots of religious allegory. I think the intention is kind of New York City in this film is purgatory, and Nicolas Cage is an angel trying to bring people to heaven, but all the lives he's unable to save, he feels tormented for. He can't help them get to the other side, and he sees these ghosts as he drives around at night. So it's very lurid, very surreal film, especially for Scorsese. That's kind of why it stood out to me a lot, is it does really feel like one of his more, how could I say?
Certainly one of his forgotten films.
Yeah.
Talks about it.
I mean, I would say it's one of his underrated, though. I think people that have seen it really like it, but it just is not one of his most seen films, and also one that I feel like a lot of people may have seen and not even realize he directed.
Right.
Because that's not one I see cited a lot when talking about him, but it certainly is Scorsese. There's plenty of it, plenty of him, of his DNA all over the movie, but it is much more surreal than other films of his I've seen, except for maybe like After Hours.
Right, which is one
would probably be the closest. It's somewhere between After Hours and Taxi Driver, I would say. But wonderful performance from Nick Cage, and Ving Rhames and Tom Sizemore also just chew up the scenery in their supporting scenes in the most fantastic way.
I like what you mentioned about the structure of it being like 3 nights.
Yes, yeah.
And each had a different,
Takes
John
place
Goodman,
over 3 nights. He has 3 different partners in the paramedic, and he's kind of creeping out all of them because Nicolas Cage can't sleep. He's an alcoholic. I kind of relate to the sleep issues part. He's just a night owl who's kind of struggling with his how should I say it, is sleep deprivation and fighting his demons without a clear mind.
Any scenes featuring a CPAP machine?
There are none, no, unfortunately. But plenty of people in oxygen tubes.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I like that you said, Ving Rhames and Tom Sizemore really shine, because John Goodman of the 3 is who I would say is like the best character.
Certainly, but he's the most like subdued of the 3 performances. Ving Rhames is kind of playing this like Southern preacher-esque character, so he's chomping on a cigar, big and loud, screaming about Jesus. This just big explosive performance, and then Tom Sizemore is doing what Tom Sizemore always does, and just off the wall energy, being an asshole, messing with people.
Good stuff. Yeah. I'd love to see
also, shout out Patricia Arquette is also wonderful in it as the somewhat love interest. Not to spoil anything. But
ooh, Patricia Arquette. Yes, big fan. That's great. All right, well, I'll go ahead and talk about my first movie that I watched recently, and that was Shame by Steve McQueen.
Yes.
Fantastic movie. One that I will never watch again, probably. It's really interesting. It has to do a lot with lust. Fassbender kills it, but it's interesting how much sex is in the movie, but none of it is remotely arousing.
Right.
It's almost like disturbing to see. Carey Mulligan shines in it. And I had seen Steve McQueen's Hunger originally with Fassbender, and I watched some of the supplementary material, and it was really funny how they talked about their relationship of when they met. Steve McQueen hated Fassbender. He's like, I didn't like him. And then come to find out, they have 2 movies together. They both are
right. Well, probably working with him, he's like, well, the guy can act. So
exactly, and he bears all. I think it's the only NC-17 movie I've ever seen.
Really?
And I think maybe it's just because it shows his dong. Like,
I think that's pretty much how you get NC-17.
Let's see.
But that's interesting what you say, though. I mean, I think there's a certain level of respect you give films like that you really like and appreciate, but does not have a high rewatch value.
Certainly not a comfort film.
No, because of uncomfortable content, whatever it may be. And I will say Steve McQueen is a big blind spot for me. I've not seen any of his films, kind of for that reason. I feel like it's a little intimidating because I know they're all
Hunger is incredible.
They're all going to be kind of heavy.
Right.
Maybe slower dramas, but certainly not an excuse. I need to watch some of those.
So I have not seen 12 Years a Slave, which he won Best Picture for. He's the first black director to win Best Picture. And that's something we talk about in another episode is, we can look at black directors who've been nominated and who we think deserves to win. Because certainly that was surprising. It was so recently. You think more of one, like Spike Lee, for instance.
Right. Boys in the Hood,
Boys
Do
in
the
the Hood,
Right Thing.
Do the Right Thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. I will say, he... one of the things I will say that's great about Steve McQueen films is he really lets the actors have like liberties in what they decide to do. Like so much of the film is just like central on their characters' faces and like the subtle expressions they make, and that's really where they shine.
That's like, are you familiar with Jonathan Demme's like his famous kind of way of shooting dialogue where it's 2 characters talking, but it just focuses on it's a one shot of the single character's face.
Right.
Right, so
exactly.
it gives a much more personal feel to a conversation.
Exactly. And I think that's something even Steve McQueen said where he's like, or maybe I'm thinking of Paul Thomas Anderson. Someone talked about, have a character in mind when writing a film and like just think about what the character would say and the film will write itself. You know what I mean? Just letting them sort of shine in their own parts.
Now, is that his first film?
It's his second. So
Hunger is his first. Okay.
But I think even then he had student films before that.
Right. Well, I'm sure he had some shorts.
Well, I mean, I would say if you've never seen him, watch Hunger as an introduction.
First,
fantastic, yeah.
I've heard great things,
You should watch. None of them are comfort films, though.
Because Steve McQueen is British, yes?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, and Hunger is about like
It's about the IRA.
Yes, right. Okay, so that makes sense.
Yes. All right. Well, that's all I've got right now for Shane. What's next for you?
Yeah. So the next one I watched was actually a second time rewatch for me, and the timing was a bit perfect or ominous, however you want to look at it. We watched the first season of Twin Peaks, which I've also already seen, and then Firewalk with Me very shortly before David Lynch passed. And Firewalk with Me is second time I've seen it. Kind of like you described Shame, a movie that does not inherently have a lot of rewatch value because it is so unbelievably dark and heavy.
A real departure from the show.
Oh yes, which is my favorite aspect of it, honestly, because I don't necessarily like Twin Peaks that much, and I love how the movie kind of very openly and very overtly tells you this is not TV. There's the opening sequence is the breaking of the television, and then there's all the stuff with Kyle MacLachlan where he is caught on the security camera in the scene with David Bowie where he enters. And I think the idea behind that scene is it's telling the audience, Agent Cooper, this character is left on TV. He is not going to be part of this movie.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
Yeah,
the way he said that. And I love the score too.
Oh, the score is amazing.
It's like noir jazz.
Angela Badalamenti, one of the greatest scores ever, I think. And just the intro of the TV static and showing the cast list over the Badalamenti score is just amazing and builds the mood for that movie so well. But like I said, it's not inherently a very rewatchable movie because it is so. It's his darkest film easily. Absolutely. I think like his heaviest subject matter certainly. Mm-hmm. But ever since I watched it the first time, it's probably the one I think about the most. It's really? Just one of those movies that stuck in my mind and lingered very large, and so I loved rewatching it. It is truly fantastic, and it's climbed up my Lynch rankings pretty significantly. I think both in constantly thinking about it after the first watch and then rewatching it again. I really do think it is one of his best films.
That's great. Yeah, I'm due for a rewatch. I think I've only seen it all the way through once. I'm a huge fan of Lost Highway. You mentioned Patricia Arquette earlier. Fantastic. Bill Pullman too. So the next time.
Sorry. I'd also like to just shout out on Fire Walk with Me. Amazing performances by Ray Wise and Cheryl Lee. As
absolutely.
The Palmer father and daughter. Their scene together at the dinner table is just so truly terrifying, and it's all done in the faces of Ray Wise and Cheryl Lee. Just a genuinely terrifying and creepy scene, and it's all done in the face acting.
It's really like two actors too who are just primarily known for their roles in Twin Peaks.
Right.
Especially it's interesting too. Cheryl Lee. I mean, she's the center of Twin Peaks.
Yes.
And she's not really featured
at
all.
No, and I think
like the
that's
Lodge, right?
Yeah. Well, she plays her cousin, right? If you remember that, she plays Laura.
I would agree.
But on that point of Cheryl Lee, Lynch found her as a local up in Washington. She was not a famous actress, but she had the right look for the girl wrapped in plastic at the beginning. But then he came to realize, she said, truly though, he thought she looked good for the dead body at the beginning, kind of the centerpiece of the show, but found out she was such a wonderful actress, he had to give her some more to do. So it started with the cousin. She plays Laura Palmer's cousin in the television series, and then he kind of gives her the whole movie to tell her side of the story, which is a really interesting idea for that show.
Yeah, that is. It's fascinating. And I've told you before, I saw that clip of Guillermo del Toro talking, and he was like, I never met David Lynch, but he knew, is it Mark Frost, the other director?
Yes.
And he said something about Mark Frost Mark Frost said about David Lynch was that he's never ironic. Everything he does.
No. David Lynch is very sincere, and I feel like a lot of people misinterpret that. Like, especially in Blue Velvet, it has this very idyllic 50s kind of vibe, and I feel like people take that as he's poking fun at, what like as many films do, poke fun at kind of the idealism of the 50s, like that kind of utopian idea of like the society of the future. But, Lynch's intention with that, I think, is sincere, because that was when he was growing up, and he had a wonderful childhood by all accounts. So like him having those ideas, or should I say that idealism of kind of that 50s mentality is genuinely sincere. It's not meant to be a counterpoint to the dark underbelly of society. Right. It is just kind of his idyllic society, but he's showing even in the best worlds, there is that dark side to humanity, which I think a lot of his films are about the kind of, he's very interested in how normal people can do horrible things, which I think is a lot about what Fire Walk with Me is about.
Absolutely.
The aspect of Bob.
Well said. And I think what's interesting about Lynch too, to keep going on for just a minute, he talks about just like vibes. Like he's like, I don't want to tell you what the film is saying.
Right.
It's like the film. Right. He has that famous quote where he's like being interviewed, and he's like, you make this movie, and then everyone wants you to talk about it. It's the film that's doing the talking.
Right.
And I think with him too, it's so interesting how he's beloved by so many, and yet all of his films, you can have your own interpretation of what they mean.
Right.
Sure, there's like an underlying narrative for what we've spoken about, the idealism and the dark underbelly, but at the same time, it's like anybody can have an interpretation, and that interpretation like can be correct in their own way. Anyways, next on my list is The Sacrifice, Tarkovsky's final film. It's in Sweden. I don't have too much to say about it because it's very metaphysical, but what's interesting about it is his use of a lot of Bergman actors.
Interesting.
And I'd like to know more
Sweden
about what shows. Exactly, Sweden, that's what I'm saying. Is it's some prominent actors who featured in other films like Fanny and Alexander and Wild Strawberries. It is his dying film. This was after soccer.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think he had some sort of form of cancer.
It's in like 80s, mid 80s, right?
Believe so, maybe 70s. I've got it somewhere back here, but anyways, it's fantastic. Also, not a comfort film to watch. It's sort of about the end of the world.
I mean, I feel like that's kind of all of his films are. You need to watch them once, and then you might revisit them later on.
I mean, cinematically, it's beautifully shot.
I'm sure.
It's fantastic. But I don't have much to say about that one. But what's next on your list?
Female Trouble, John Waters. I believe it's his second movie after Multiple Maniacs.
Really quickly, I almost brought this up earlier. We were talking about Lynch. John Waters and Lynch, were buddies back when they were doing the Midnight Features, the Racerhead. And John Waters said, him and Lynch both were two people who like loved the 50s and hated the 50s at the same time.
Right.
Which I thought was very fascinating.
Female Trouble, kind of made me think I'm not a big John Waters guy. I feel like that's one of his more acclaimed.
It's beloved. Yeah, exactly.
Right. I loved Polyester.
Polyester's great.
Thought Polyester was fantastic. But Female Trouble, I don't know. I just didn't really click with me. Divine is great, obviously, playing this kind of troubled teenager, which is funny, who is just loudmouthed and wants to be the center of attention for the entire world. It just feels very, how could I say this? It's certainly a early work and certainly a very independent movie.
Right.
You can tell it has low production value.
Yeah. But to some, I would say that's sort of the charm of
It is. But then Polyester feels like a very polished movie.
Well, yes, that's right. And it's almost satirical. We talked about that when he released it in theaters, he had the smell-o-vision.
Right.
Where it's that you get a scratch and sniff card and a character farts at one point.
Right.
Scratch and smell it. So it's kind of his take on it. And I think what's so great about sorry to cut you off from Female Trouble. One last thing I'll say about Polyester is just the title polyester, being this cheap fabric, is fantastic. Something interesting about say about polyester and being a studio is sort of the idea of polyester being this cheap fabric, and it's almost like a knockoff of this traditional Hollywood love story.
Right. With it features even Tab Hunter, who was a big icon, or somewhat of a what would you say, a sex symbol of the 50s.
Right,
He's in a lot of those, lighthearted romantic comedies of the era. So his casting in that is certainly very pointed.
So do you know who was the director that John Waters and I think Todd Haynes was also influenced by? It's kind of like that old 50s. Tab Hunter might have been in some
Douglas Sirk.
Douglas Sirk, yes, that's exactly right.
That's Written in the Wind.
Right. Something about Autumn.
I think a lot of people, I know...
sort of a blind spot for me. I haven't seen any of Douglas Sirk.
Right. Douglas Sirk, I know Fassbender, that is kind of his idol as well. And Douglas Sirk is famous for his 50s melodramas, these very heightened romantic tales with great big performances, so much melodrama, lots of crying, lots of screaming.
Right.
I do have one correction though. Female Trouble actually came after Pink Flamingos, so it's actually his third movie.
Oh wow! I didn't know.
Multiple Maniacs, Pink Flamingos, and then Female Trouble.
I tried to watch Multiple Maniacs, and like you said, it's very amateur, and that shouldn't.
That one is truly just him and his friends with a camera in his backyard.
It's something noble about that.
Right.
Just being we're just gonna. I have this interesting cast of characters around me. And we're just going to shoot and see what comes out.
Right. But that's not to say I'm turned off from John Waters. There's still a lot of films I want to see of his. I still really want to see Pink Flamingos. Even I'm sure it does also kind of have that low production value. You can tell it's just made for a cheaper budget with local actors. But
is that the one with the infamous scene where someone's dog shit?
Yes, Divine eats real dog poop. You see the dog poop it out, and she puts it in her mouth and eats it. Yes.
Certainly a bold director, right?
I will say to Female Trouble, though, I did not enjoy it for the most part. Like I said, it just, I don't know. I can see why people do enjoy it. It does have that just camp classic value that I'm sure people really latch onto, and I'm sure it's kind of a comfort movie for a lot of people.
I was going to say that.
But the ending sequence, I love. It kind of makes the movie for me, where Divine kind of has their big explosive performance at the end. They're dying to be famous, and they end up shooting up a theater while they're on stage.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. But it's a wonderful ending. It's very campy. So I did love the way the film ended, but overall, just didn't connect with me, I would say, but I could appreciate it and see why others liked it. But
gotcha. All right. Well, next on my list, I watched just the beginning of this month was Cotton Comes to Harlem. Famous blaxploitation film, Coffin Ed and Bone Digger.
Nice.
Great. It's fantastic. Very, very funny. Very stylistic. Jeffrey Cambridge. So good.
Great.
His face, he'll make these smirks and stuff, and it's just you fall in love with the character.
Have you seen The Watermelon Man?
I have not.
Well, he is the lead of that. Where he begins the movie in whiteface. He's a white man.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
White man turned into a black man overnight.
That's Melvin Van Peebles.
It is.
That's a launch over too.
Before Sweet Sweetback.
That's before Sweet.
Yes. Yep. Wow. It is.
Huh.
because he made his first movie is Tale of a 3-Day Pass.
Oh, that's right.
Right,
That.
and then
and that takes place in Britain, correct?
I am not sure. I have not seen that, and I really don't know that much about it. I know it deals with race relations or race issues, as all of his films do. But I do know that when they were making Watermelon Man, you know, they had the script and they thought, well, we cannot let a white guy direct this, or there will be a
wow! So he didn't write it.
No. It's a genuine studio movie and a studio script, and they were like, we have to get a black guy to direct this. And at the time, there was really only one black, acclaimed black director, because he had made Tale of a 3-Day Pass.
Interesting. Wow.
So that's how he got that job. But Godfrey Cambridge is fantastic in the film, and it's sad because he died.
He passed.
He passed like pretty shortly after.
He was like 43.
Right after his big movies, like I think it was only 5 or so years after Watermelon Man, and it's like he could have been so much bigger. He's so wonderful. He's so funny.
I was watching Kind Comes Harlem, and that's like immediately afterwards. I was like, okay, I gotta find out what else this guy's in. And, huge comedian at the time.
Yes, big comedian. Tragically.
But
you wonder what he could have been.
Right. And I love the thing I love about blaxploitation too is like the sense of like leaning into the stereotypes and kind of making them their own. I mean, Kind Comes to Harlem. The idea is like they're storing money in a bale of cotton in Harlem, and it's very well done. Red Fox is in it.
Awesome.
And he kind of is playing almost a character similar to Sanford and Son. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Very good.
Love Red Fox. So then the next one I would watch, or I have watched, and the last one I have here is Dances with Wolves, Kevin Costner.
Oh wow!
I love a egotistical kind of self-absorbent passion project, right? I do genuinely.
Would you say
love
he's an
that.
auteur with that
Kind
world?
of. Yeah. I mean, kind of. Like he has his own ideas and he has his own visions. Are they great?
Yeah, I was gonna say they don't always work out.
No, but he
goes for it.
He goes for it. And I always love something about just an uninhibited, just purely egotistical passion project. Like very, self-absorbent. Indulgent. That's the word I was looking for. Yes, a very self-indulgent. Dances with Wolves maybe is not quite as self-indulgent as Waterworld, and I know he didn't direct Waterworld.
And you've seen that one too,
yes,
right?
Yes, I have seen Waterworld, and I would not say I'm a huge fan of it. But he didn't technically direct Waterworld. He got one of his good friends who directed him in Robin Hood to do it. But it's essentially his film.
Right.
But what's interesting about Dance with Wolves is how massively popular it was when it came out. It was Best Picture winner, just one of the highest grossing movies of the year.
Yeah,
I
think it won a ton of Oscars.
It won a ton of Oscars. Yes, I think he might have won Best Director too. And it was a sensation when it came out. And so it's kind of interesting to view it in that light, especially since today I feel like it's not necessarily a highly discussed film or one that is even really thought of that much. I mean, at this point, I feel like Waterworld has surpassed it in maybe notoriety, but at least,
I don't know about that. I mean, I think, I guess so.
But
with people in like this like film, film buff sphere, I would say so.
Right. I don't think like Waterworld.
The average, consumer is not going to.
Right. And I think you could honestly make the argument Waterworld has become somewhat of a cult film, and I don't think you could probably make that argument for Dances with Wolves.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
So, it is kind of slow. It definitely has some white savior complex because he's the lone man.
I was going to say, people think James Cameron's Avatar just kind of stole
kind of. And the thing I will say is it has some truly like breathtaking shots in it. And Kevin Costner, there's just some wonderful shots. And this is very self-indulgent, but some of the best shots in the movie are just Costner like standing on a hill with his long hair blowing in the wind and horses running around him. And it is beautiful.
Nothing indulgent about that.
No, center of frame. But it's an enjoyable movie. It's pretty long, but it is kind of interesting. I guess I could say I kind of get why it was such a sensation when it came out. It's definitely more of its time. I don't think it would be as big of a hit today, but I mean, like you said, the formula, Avatar, it's still a formula being used. So.
All right. Next on my list is Rafifi. Jules Dassin, is that
yeah, Dawson. I'm not entirely sure.
Right, which was interesting because I don't think I've seen any of his films. You've seen
Night in the City, which I love.
Which I actually have seen.
Yeah, you watched that, yeah.
Right. Something interesting about Rafifi was he was blacklisted in Hollywood after making, I think, Brute Force and Night in the City, and went back to Paris and directed this film, which is like a masterpiece. Like it's truly fantastic.
Yes, this is after
Night
in the City.
Adapted from a novel, which I just found out. And what's interesting about the novel is he didn't like a lot of the themes in it. I guess there were racist themes, and there's a whole scene with like necrophilia in the book. So yeah, gonna have to check that book out. Right? Yeah, definitely comfort there. The term Rafifi means like troubled, violent conflict, and there's a great scene in a club where she sings. A lady sings at the club this song Rafifi, kind of about the gangsters that like embody the film.
What does Rafifi mean again?
Troubled, violent conflict, kind of just like a
a general term.
Like gangsters. Yeah, exactly. He there's a whole half-hour scene of them doing this diamond heist that's like completely silent. And when I heard that, when I first got the movie, I was like, oh, maybe this movie a little boring. I'll just watch it on like a relaxed day. Nothing boring about it. It's truly riveting.
Well, and that's what I love about Night in the City is its pacing feels so modern.
Exactly.
It's a frantic movie. I feel like the lead character, I'm blanking on the actor's name right now, but he's always on the run in Night in the City, and you just don't see that in 50s movies a lot. You don't see that frantic pace of it's one night, takes place over, he's running constantly, he's hurried, he's scared. And I feel like you just really don't get that energy from a lot of movies of the time, and it feels very modern.
And I would say, like, there's so many directors now who use that, like the Safdie brothers immediately comes to mind. Or like what you mentioned, After Hours. Scorsese's After Hours is very much like fast-paced.
Right. And I know Rafifi, my knowledge of it, having not seen it, is it is a huge influence on just heist movies in general.
Exactly.
It's kind of one of the original.
It's sort of like like a staple of like the noir film.
Right.
For sure. Last thing I'll say about it, which I thought was interesting, the lead actor, who I'm going to butcher this name, Jean Servais, Servais, he was kind of down in his luck. He had problems with alcoholism, and his acting career kind of went in the toilet. And he gave him the shot, and he excels.
That's awesome.
Fantastic. Yeah, I love it when directors do that.
Love a great comeback performance.
Exactly. Do you have any others recent watch? I've got one more. Okay.
No.
Last one I watched last night with my lovely wife, Julia, we watched Whiplash, Damien Chazelle, which is fantastic. It was truly, talk about fast pace. I mean, it is. And the crazy thing was, I looked it up, it was filmed in 19 days.
Wow.
And the budget was $3.3 million. Miles Teller only got paid $8,000.
That's not a lot, yeah.
Only got paid $8,000, yeah.
I guess he wasn't, his
big, like, well, I think he was in like Disney Channel stuff.
Yeah, that would make sense.
He's kind of a child actor.
I could see
but this was sort of his like departure from where he was known as. And it was cool too because I didn't know Miles Teller was self-taught on the drums at 15. He played them. He kind of
he had some experience. Yeah.
But then in the film, apparently he was taught. He did like 3 days a week, 4-hour training, and like he actually played a lot of the drums in it. And J.K. Simmons, man.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
I don't know if it's a hot take. He's funny in it. Some of his
I'm sure.
But some people see, he's extremely abusive.
Right.
That's not like a spoiler.
I would assume, and tell me if I'm wrong, he's funny in the way R. Lee Ermey is funny in Full Metal Jacket.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Just harsh.
Yes.
Just critical of the entire band.
But you gotta love a good one-liner.
And I can't trust this. You have to watch this movie. There's stuff I want to talk to you about with it. But it would be like spoilers. But
that's one that's been on my watch list genuinely since it came out.
Yeah, I know, and I haven't seen any of Chazelle's other works. I know he made La La Land, which was a huge hit, and then First Man in Babylon, that new movie.
Oh, which I've heard is kind of unhinged.
Right. That was sort of a passion project, if you will.
Oh, definitely. That's
or his love letter film.
Right.
And an interesting point, from the two films I watched, it made me feel like it was meant to be and in Whiplash. Miles Teller's character goes and sees Rafifi in the theaters with his dad.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Perfect. All right. Well, cool. So the topic of this episode is going to be comfort films of ours. First off, Bobbitt, how do you... his name is Chandler. Last name's Bobbitt. We call him Bobbitt. That's why you'll hear me say that a lot, just for the record. How do you define a comfort film?
Comfort... So I do think there's a difference to establish between a comfort film and what our favorite movies are.
Exactly.
A comfort film would be one that just has intrinsic rewatch value for you at any time, right?
It doesn't have to be objectively good either.
No, not at all.
You'll see it from our list.
It's movies that you enjoy on just a pure enjoyment level, right?
Correct.
Like you don't need to overly analyze them. You don't. It's just what you want to watch when maybe you're struggling to find something to watch where you're like, It's a movie you can put on and know you're in good hands because you've seen it so many times.
Right.
You know what's going to happen, but it still kind of keeps you engaged, or maybe not. It's also movies you can toss on in the background while you're doing stuff, and you might stop and watch some of your favorite scenes while they're on.
Exactly.
Whereas your favorite movies can be stuff that are maybe more challenging and maybe more
or elicit different emotions.
Right.
Like I would
certainly.
say, Good Time is one of my favorite movies. Good Time is not comfortable to watch.
No.
Because you are on the edge of your seat the entire time watching.
Firewalk with Me. I would put that up with some of my favorite movies, but that is not a comforting movie by any sense.
Whereas the comfort film is like a joy. Like maybe you're sick, you're not feeling well, and you're like, I'll just toss this on, or something you just have on in the background. And so like like you said, like a couple of scenes, you're like, oh, I gotta watch this part. I love this part.
Right.
Exactly. So that's great. All right. Well, let's. I'll start us off with one comfort film because I think this is going to be sort of we're going to be glazing a certain director here because we have 3 of their films on it. The first one of mine is Jacques Tati's Monsieur Hulot's Holiday. Have you seen that one, Monsieur Hulot's Holiday?
No, that is the one I have not seen. Okay. That's the first of the Monsieur Hulot's.
Yes, exactly. It's the second film. His first film is Jour de Fête, and it's just a classic summertime film. If you're at the beach, here's a good way to put it. Vacationing at the beach, it's a rainy day at the beach, can't go out there. Throw this movie on. It's a movie you want to live in. You want to live in the world of it. Satire, visual satire at its finest. Fantastic film to watch at the beginning of the summer. And it also deals a lot with what Tati talks about, or tries to say in his other films about modernism. Sort of like the Monsieur Hulot has trouble with the modern cars. And, it's very interesting in that sense. And that'll lead into one of your comfort films.
Playtime, which is all about what you just said, modernism. It's about him being lost in the rapidly urbanizing Paris of the 60s. And I would the best one-word description of that movie I think you could give it is just whimsical.
That's all of his fun.
It is. They're very quiet. Monsieur Hulot is Mr. Bean. It takes a lot from.
Well, I was gonna say too. It's like a lot of like the silent films.
Yes. A lot of visual gags. A lot of physical acting on Tati's part. But Playtime has to be one of the biggest comfort movies for me. I can always just turn it on. Something's always happening on screen.
Right.
It has no plot. It's just Tati wandering around this urbanized Paris, and it's
beautiful. I mean, his set structure too. Didn't he build that?
Yes, it's
set?
all built. At the time, I think it was one of, if not the most expensive movie ever made, at least in France. And it kind of got him canceled into traffic because it just went so over budget. And I don't know if people were not forgiving of it after seeing it. I would be, because it's a masterpiece.
It's truly not tour. Talking about
it
tour.
Is genuinely. The sets feel like it's hard to compare to other films because I don't know of much else like Tati's work. I mean, Mr. Bean obviously takes everything from Tati. I mean, no, genuinely,
I'm not familiar with. I haven't seen Mr. Bean.
I think that's like well established by Rowan Atkinson because the first Bean movie is, or they do Mr. Bean's Holiday, which is
there you go.
Mr. Hulot's Holiday. Yes.
Something that's interesting, like you said, about him taking all these chances, and the films, they're so whimsical, like you said, and they're so like childlike. It's a movie you could show your grandparents, and they would love it.
I show my mother this movie because we've been to Paris together, and Paris is interesting because you see all the old architecture in the city, and then you go kind of outside where the business districts are, and it's all these modern skyscrapers, or even from this time, from the 60s. You can kind of tell that the city was kind of at battle with itself over
I was
maintaining that historical.
It's like a theme that's almost still present today.
Yeah.
Of like this like brutalist architecture, kind of like the loss of like the
Right.
soul of the city.
And and I think Playtime is kind of about the coldness of that modern architecture and kind of our modern way of living. I would say Playtime really does feel like a dream in that he's trying to meet this guy and he just keeps getting sidetracked by everything. And that to me feels just like what happens in a dream. You're trying to accomplish something and you just keep getting sidetracked. You just cannot get that one thing done.
Well, and I think like sort of the genius of it too is his idea of like these little gadgets that are supposed to modernize the world and actually complicating everything that much more.
Right. And then it's like the idea of, he shows up to meet this businessman for, we never know. We don't know why he's there. It's not important. And he just he cannot reach him. He talks to a bunch of different secretaries. They tell him he's in that room. He goes to that room. He walks out. Which to me feels so dreamlike in that he's just keeps getting misdirected in this. Truly, it's a maze of cubicles and offices. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful just set piece and then the ending, the entire second half of the movie takes place all in one restaurant, and it's just this wonderful party sequence of kind of everything going off the walls. People start getting a little rowdy.
The glass door breaks, and he keeps having the guy hold
he keeps holding the handle. It's wonderful.
Great. And then the sign, like pointing him back. He gets kicked out, the sign points him right back in. It's fantastic.
Just whimsical, just such a light watch too.
It's amazing, like the juxtaposition between how beautiful and like childlike his films are, and then his life being like wrought with like bankruptcy and financial struggles. It's really a shame, but it's so amazing. He was still able to stay true to his vision in so many of his films. So that leads into the next film, which is the last of Tati's. We love them. Trafic, which you also like a lot.
Yes.
Which is funny that I put this on list, not you, because you're a huge car guy.
I know. But Playtime is my Tati film, but it is funny that you prefer Trafic.
Well, to talk about comfort, the scene where they're all sitting in traffic, and that's kind of a point on the modernity of things. Like it's like we all have our individual cars, and it's causing these collisions like held up in time. The scene where everybody's sitting in their car and like subtly trying to pick their nose and stuff.
It's so funny. And it also, just like Playtime, it talks about, it's all about like this modernization and this urbanization, or just the rapid development of technology during that time. I mean, you got to think like that is probably the time period where guys like Tati, he was probably born in the early 1900s, right? Mm-hmm. Like, he's seeing like the most technological advances over a lifetime. Like I think any person could probably see, right? Like, compare it to our lifetimes, like, and the advances within his are so much greater. And, it's a lot about like how kind of we're losing that human connection, which is still a topic in movies a lot today with social media and the internet and all that stuff. And it's kind of interesting to see that idea was present even 60 years ago, just in the kind of coldness of technology.
One thing I will say about it, and like you said, the plot is almost secondary, is he's a car designer, and the whole point is he's creating this like camper car with all these little gadgets and stuff. So it's like the idea of like every year, we gotta have a new model.
Right, because he's preparing for a car show.
Exactly. And talking about comfort, I found this review of it from Judith Christ of New York Magazine. She wrote in her review, Jacques Tati's Trafic is so non-blockbuster, in fact, that it is absolutely therapeutic for today's moviegoer. A velvet gloved healing hand from the past to remind us of children's laughter and adult smiles of satisfaction at that comedy that had indeed invoked their laughter at the first sight. And that's so true. You know what I mean? I saw that and I was like, that's perfect awesome. For the comfort film.
That's perfect.
The other thing I'll say about it is the term trafic was not used in French. There's another term for traffic. And people said he wanted to use that as a title because it's like franglais, and I guess because American audiences also loved it at the time, so it's almost like his step away from that. Let's see what else.
But that is, it should be mentioned too. That is kind of his comeback from Playtime, because Playtime really destroyed it.
So was Mon Oncle
was before? Yes, it was Menzurila's Holiday, Mon Oncle, Playtime, and then a sizable gap, and then Trafic.
Right.
Because Playtime is 1964, I think, and Trafic is
71.
71 or 72.
Okay. Feel free to correct us on
yes, please. Yes.
Kind of shooting from the hip
fact
here.
Check us, please. Yes. But because Playtime was just so expensive and so unwieldy, and it is kind of very uncommercial for how comforting it is, and how universal it is. I mean, I think anybody can enjoy that movie. But it is kind of inherently uncommercial.
It's great how his films, like we said, the plot is almost secondary, but there's never a point where you're like, oh, what's the point of this?
No,
because
no.
it's like, there is no point, and that is the point.
Yes.
It's just like sheer joy.
Yes, I will have to say, when I was watching with my girlfriend Jenna, she was asking, she was like, wait, so what's going on? And I kept having to say, don't worry about it. Just watch. Just watch.
Just go off the vibe.
Yeah, you just watch this guy. You know, there's nothing going on. I can't tell you what's happening.
That's
like,
the beauty of it.
Yeah, exactly. So.
All right. Well, cool. What's your next on the
Oh, my next is a great one. It is Jan de Bont's 1994 masterpiece, Speed. A film I love very dearly. One that was kind of a blind spot for me until
this is the first blockbuster
a few years ago.
About here.
Yes, which I think we'll delve into more as we go on. But a good juxtaposition for how our tastes differ. Yeah. Because I don't think this is a movie necessarily up Nathan's alley.
I still need to see it. I have not seen it, which I know is kind of a crime. Everybody's like, you gotta watch Speed.
Yes, and it's a movie that, you know, it's always been a huge movie at the time, has always been well remembered, well known as a great action movie, but I feel like especially recently is getting more of a critical reclaiming in that I seeing a lot of people say, oh, Speed is actually a masterpiece, which I agree with. Mm-hmm. It is a movie you have to kind of suspend your disbelief.
I was going to say the concept of it is so like...
It is silly. You have to suspend your disbelief for many, many things that happen in the film, but you just go along for the ride, and it's amazing.
Go along for the ride, no pun intended. I would say, too, what's interesting is, as we're joking about the concept of it, I haven't seen the film, but I would imagine there's no point where it is like almost like a gag. Like they're not like alluding. There's no irony in it.
No.
Crazy.
No, it's you know, I would say, and well, this kind of takes me into the next film I'll talk about, but I'll save a little bit for that. Okay. It's one of those perfect films where if it didn't take itself seriously, it probably wouldn't work as well because it would be more on a level of a parody, right? Mm-hmm. But it to me, it feels like it does take itself seriously, but at the same time, understanding it's a bit ridiculous, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Right. Because what it does is it does a great job establishing characters first and foremost, so you actually kind of care about the people in this situation. Sandra Bullock, you know, you like her character from the get-go. Smart mouth, very funny. You know, that's her breakout movie, really. That and Demolition Man the year before.
Okay.
But so it does such a great job establishing these characters. Keanu Reeves, I think that is maybe my favorite performance of his. And so the stakes are so high, and you do care for these characters, and I think that just gives it such rewatch value, and the action is so intense and so nonstop. It has amazing set pieces, amazing action pieces. You know, it's a movie I've seen a million times, but every time I watch it, I'm still on the edge of my seat, and I know exactly what's going to happen. And to me, I think that's about as good as you can get. Yeah, for an action movie like that as well. Dennis Hopper also incredibly good in it as the villain.
Really?
Oh yeah. So funny. You know, they let him choose some scenery for sure.
Perfect. All right. Well, then I'm definitely
yeah, it's pretty great. Jeff Daniels is in it as well.
Okay.
It's just a wonderful, wonderful film.
All right. Clapping back in. All right. Had some mic issues. Hopefully that's not too apparent. Perfect. All right. Next on my list is Nacho Libre. So like we're going on here. Most would say that was not. It was received poorly, very 50-50, but I would say it's a masterpiece as well. You know, Jared Hess following his actual cult masterpiece, Napoleon Dynamite. I prefer Nacho Libre.
I don't think I realized that.
Yeah. And so Jack Black was such a fan of Napoleon Dynamite that he met with him and he was like, I want you to shoot this film. And apparently Jack Black initially was like, I have some like, you know, I feel kind of weird about playing, you know, this Mexican actor, but Jared Hess assured him, he's like, no, you're supposed to be a gringo in Mexico.
Right.
Have you seen Nacho Libre?
I did when I was a kid, and I mean, I will say, I thought Jack Black was a Mexican guy. After watching it, he's good.
Yeah.
The mustache, like the look really suits Jack Black. Yeah. Like that was what I knew Jack Black as for a long time.
Well, I saw it in theaters, and it blew my mind, and I watched it religiously afterwards, which is funny because, you know, it's about this sort of, he's in a religious covenant, and he loves wrestling secretly. Just another movie you want to live in the world of, in my opinion. I love the style of it. The comedy just hits for me. Some people think it's stale. I'm like, oh, it's the same joke over and over again. I disagree wholeheartedly. That's something I need to watch again soon. That's one of those films that if I see it on TV, which it's hardly ever on TV, and I don't really watch much TV, I would always put it on and just laugh my heart away.
I used to get that movie confused with do you remember the Will Ferrell Spanish language movie that came out around the same time?
Padre.
Yes, I used to get those two confused.
Never seen that, but
no,
that's one
supposed to be pretty bad.
Golly, yeah. We're the only movie podcast that ever referenced that film. That's funny. Something cool about it too is I'm a big fan of Beck. I don't know if you like Beck at all. Okay. And Beck was supposed to make the music for the entire movie, and the studio was like, he's not really the vibe for it, so they made Danny Elfman make the music instead. Okay. Beck still has some songs in it. The soundtrack is incredible too, and yeah, Jack Black just shines in it. Obviously, School of Rock is Jack Black's, I guess best performance. I also think he's great in The Cable Guy. You've seen The Cable Guy. And High Fidelity too.
High Fidelity, Shallow Hal?
Shallow Hal, yeah.
Okay, maybe not.
Hey, I like Jack Black.
That's maybe a more troubled movie.
Still, I mean, can't say enough. I loved it. The problem with it though too, and I think the reason it didn't see as much acclaim as Plain Dynamite, and I just found this out, is it opened the same week as Cars did. So it always appeared second.
That was what I was in theaters watching, certainly.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
Well, that's one I love. So
yeah, we love Mater. Okay, my next one is a film very dear to my heart, very important to me, I would say, and it is Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift.
Nice.
One of my favorites. I would say I would include the entire Fast and Furious franchise in comfort films.
Look at your
yes, it is a car, and it is one of the ones featured in Fast and Furious.
Yes.
Actually, what Nathan is referencing, it's a Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 3.
That's
is my screensaver. And in Tokyo Drift, they drift an Evo 7. Okay, the newer version of that car. But it's a hard movie to, I don't know, just...
It's coming back into favor.
It is coming back into favor, which I love. I've always been a diehard fan of it. I think the biggest critique of it is Lucas Black's performance, which I'm not going to sit here and defend. It is pretty wooden. He's about 10 years too old to be playing a high schooler. But it's just vibes. It's just great atmosphere. It's just enjoyable. Like, you just one of the movies you just suspend your disbelief, as all of Fast and Furious movies.
Right.
Go along for the ride. You enjoy it. Fast and Furious, kind of like Speed, I think maybe to a higher degree, are movies. And please dispute this if you feel this is not your read on the franchise. They are so ridiculous, and they just get more and more absurd as it goes on.
I don't think that's any. I think everybody thinks they're.
Well, that wasn't my take. My take is that they are. The thing that makes them great is that they feel like they take themselves seriously, but at the same time, like, they know it's ridiculous. If that makes sense.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Absolutely.
There's a version of those movies you could make where they don't take it seriously, and they kind of, wink at the camera and say, "We know this is stupid, but it's funny." And I think that's a worse version of the movie.
I was going to say, their success is due to not
exactly. It works because it takes itself seriously enough. You can be like, "Oh, this is ridiculous," but it also has me at the edge of my seat.
It's like sheer entertainment.
It is. It is genuinely sheer entertainment.
But I would almost argue Tokyo Drift is the more stylistic of the other ones. The other one's is much more popcorn.
It is. Tokyo Drift and Too Fast, Too Furious are probably the most highly stylized ones, which is maybe my second favorite.
Okay.
I don't know. That's a whole other discussion. Getting
I still got like
ranking
7 to see.
Yeah. Well, they keep coming out with them.
I should watch more of them. I do enjoy them.
They're wonderful. They're so much fun to watch. Yeah. Too Fast, Too Furious. I think if you watched the first 3 movies together, you would understand a lot about my tastes and interests. Those movies were very, very important to me as a kid.
They mended you, yes.
Yeah, they definitely shaped my future interests.
All right. Well, speaking of shape, the next on
Shape
my list
of Water?
No. is Heavyweights. Heavyweights, and I put Max Keeble's Big Move.
Max Keeble's Big Move.
Because that's just, when I was a kid, those are movies that I loved. Yeah. Both have scenes of like dancing that, like, when I was a kid was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Max Keeble's Big Move, where he's chugging the milkshake, and you're like, chug. Is
it Josh Peck doing that, right?
No, it's Max Keeble.
Oh,
Josh
okay.
Peck also is, what's his name in it? Robe? Because he always wears a robe?
Yeah. I don't
one of
remember
your
that
favorite actors, Jamie Kennedy.
Yes.
As the ice cream guy, and they make ice cream soup. But anyways, the scene I love that makes the comfort watch for me is definitely when he's at the milkshake bar and it's playing that song like you want it.
Yeah.
It's like when I was a kid, I was like, I wish that was me. You know what I mean? And then Heavyweights, same thing. They go to the dance and they play Love Machine by Wham, and they start dancing with I guess the cute girls, and they're all the heavyweights, and it's just sheer joy on screen. You it makes you feel good watching that movie. Ben Stiller, I think, directed it too, right? And he's sort of the bad guy of the film, and just a fantastic movie. A movie that I think could still be watched today with some love.
I have actually not seen Heavyweights.
You've not seen Heavyweights?
No.
Wow.
I know.
Because Chandler, our friend, and I, we love that.
I know, and I feel like that's a big movie. A lot of people watched as kids, and I didn't even know about that.
You could watch it today and still get a lot of joy
mentioned to me. Yeah, I think it's a Disney movie.
There's a kid in it. What's so funny too is there's a kid in it that if you're familiar with Andy Milonakis, everybody be like, oh, that's Andy Milonakis. Actually, not Andy Milonakis. Yeah, but it looks. You have to see. It looks just like Andy Milonakis. Very funny. All right, what's next on your list for you?
Well, speaking of Andy Milonakis, Waiting. No, I'm just kidding. No, I do. Still Waiting. The John Michael Higgins vehicle. No, I do enjoy Waiting. But
so what are the two back now? There was one where I was like, no other podcast. Oh, Costa de Padre, and now Still Waiting. Yes. No, the next movie I'll be talking about is Kicking It Old School, Jamie Kennedy. Yeah, right.
Just think of the most obscure early 2000s comedies we can. No, but my next movie is a comedy, not early 2000s, quite 1999, and it is Office Space. Mike Judge's.
Fantastic.
A movie that I think is how to describe it, the hellscape or the purgatory of the suburban offices and that lifestyle. It is meant to be a little distressing, and you're meant to understand that this is draining. This is not a life people want to live. But there is something I do find so weirdly comforting in just that whole vibe of that late 90s.
It's relatable.
It is. Well, I was going to say, I loved the movie before I'd ever worked in an office, and then after working in an office, it just grew in stature for me.
Absolutely.
But, the movie it is this suburban hellscape they're in. I don't even think you know what city they're in. It's the shots of them in traffic. They're all in their little economy cars.
Right.
Trying to get to work. There is something kind of weirdly comforting about that vibe of just
great music too.
Ghetto Boys. Office, yes, lots of Ghetto Boys in it.
Which
great
is
soundtrack.
I guess hysterical, and this is I guess stating the obvious. It's funny, these people work these mundane jobs, and yet they're listening to gangster.
Right, exactly. And it's the nerdiest one of them is the one that's the Ghetto Boys fan.
What's his name? Michael Collins?
No, Michael Bolton. Because he's named after the singer. Right.
Do you know the actor who is in Scrubs?
Yes, it's
I can't think of his name.
John McGinley.
John McGinley's so
John
good.
McGinley. Yes. His one scene is maybe the funniest scene in the movie, where he's interviewing Ron Livingston about what he does at work, and Ron Livingston is just being honest and says, I show up, I don't really do much work, and then I leave.
I twiddle my thumbs,
and they love it. They're wanting to promote him because he's so open and honest.
And that's, talk about relatable. There's so much of people's office jobs that really is just kind of looking busy.
Yeah, exactly. You'd be surprised how many people that is their job. And then just filled with wonderful character actors like Gary Cole, as Lundberg, and then Stephen Root is the guy with the stapler and the big glasses.
I'm gonna blank on it, but what's the game that the guy makes?
It's a jump to decision. Jump to decision board. That's his $1 million idea after he gets the insurance payout. It's like hopscotch or whatever, but you jump to a decision. That's so funny.
That's great.
But just a wonderful movie that it kind of gives me a warm feeling. I don't know.
Absolutely, Mike Judge.
Mike Judge. I do love Mike Judge.
Yeah, me too. I like Idiocracy a lot too.
Yes.
And that's the movie everybody's like,
that's one I need to rewatch.
Really?
I will say, yes.
Not as good as Office Space. I think
Office Space is fantastic.
Also really like Beavis and Butthead Do America.
Oh yeah, great.
Good movie.
Great.
So next on my list to kind of go back to this artsy sort of thing is Zazie dans le Metro. Louis Malle, love that director.
Yes.
Elevator to the Gallows, fantastic. And this is like his surrealist comedy. It is just unbelievably different. Very slapsticky, a lot of inappropriate jokes that hit perfectly. Very
kind of
funny.
like
charming in a way,
Right.
Have you seen that film?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I love. That was a movie I watched, and I was like, it hurt how much I smiled during that film.
Yeah, it's whimsical.
Just it's truly a comfort for me.
I did not quite enjoy it as much as you did. I love the sequence when they're in traffic, and I mean back to
when they're on the Eiffel Tower and like the way the camera is shot. I love the director's choices.
Right. No, it is a very whimsical movie, and I mean it relates right back to the Tati stuff. I mean, it really is kind of like a step forward in that same direction.
Exactly.
Kind of taking it a bit further.
Well, it looks like my computer's about to die here, but I can just shoot from the hip more. So one thing I will say about it, the directing style, like I mentioned, is sometimes dizzying, but also kaleidoscopic. And what's interesting is it was based off of a book, and when you watch the movie, like, how could this even be a book? Like, the way he decided to choose from it. So I'm sure he took a lot of liberties in that sense. That's one that if you haven't seen it or haven't heard of it, definitely watch it.
Yes. This is Escape from New York. John Carpenter's 1981 film. It's my favorite Carpenter. I've seen all of his films at this point, except for Christine. That is the only blind spot I have. I've even seen Memoirs of an Invisible Man with Chevy Chase. Terrible film.
Yeah.
Just abysmal.
Yeah, John Carpenter is the man, though. Did you watch that thing I seen last night where John Carpenter was talking about going to the horror dinners?
Yeah.
Just the coolest guy.
Yeah, John Carpenter is hanging out with, saw on Instagram, he's hanging out with Keith David, which is fucking awesome.
Great character. We'll talk about him more, I'm sure, in another podcast.
Definitely. But I love Carpenter, one of my favorite directors, and it is my favorite film of his. And I kind of love it because I feel like it is most often classified as an action movie, but it's really not. It's very...
Yep. All right. So next on your list is Escape from New York.
Yes. My favorite of Carpenter's films. I'm a big Carpenter fan. Love all of his work. I've seen everything except for Christine. That is my only blind spot.
Which is Cars. You should love that one.
And one of his more famous movies, so I need to watch it soon.
Yeah, I'd love to see it too.
Escape from New York is my favorite, has always been my favorite. It's kind of the one I always come back to. I love how it's typically labeled as an action movie, and I guess that would be the easiest genre to fit it in, but it really is not an action movie. It's very slowly paced, not a lot really. There's not many big action set pieces in it at all. I love the fight in the ring where Kurt Russell swings the bat with the nails in it at the guy's head.
Isaac Hayes, right?
Yes, Isaac Hayes is the Duke of New York, drives around in the Cadillac with the chandeliers on the hood. Love that. And you were talking earlier about Miles Teller being a Disney star and Whiplash, kind of him going against type and being a big breakout. And that is the exact same for Kurt Russell in this movie. He was a child Disney star, a cute-faced young boy.
So is this before Used Cars?
No, this is 1 year after Used Cars. So that was kind of his first foray into more adult films. Used Cars, wonderful film. Everyone should watch it. Very, very funny. And Kurt Russell is just charming the pants off of everybody in that. But that's kind of in the same lane, right? Like, I would compare him to Zac Efron, would be a modern equivalent, right? And, Used Cars is still in that kind of comedy lane, like the Disney movies he was doing, like The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes is one, or I think he might be in The Shaggy Dog, the first one.
Not the
no
Tim Allen vehicle.
Not the Tim Allen vehicle.
Nice.
But so he's playing so against type, and he does it so well. It's insane to think that just a few years ago he was, this fresh-faced young boy in these Disney comedies, these family comedies, and then he's Snake Plissken, like the most badass character put on screen.
Metal Gear Solid, right? Famously stole that character.
Yes. Metal Gear Solid, 100% based on Snake from this film. And, Snake is supposed to be kind of a parody of the Action Man, of kind of ultra machismo, yes, like ultra masculinity. But at the same time, while it is a parody, it's still so effortlessly cool.
Yes,
and that's kind of what makes the
that.
movie amazing. Is you're following this protagonist that is just so effortlessly confident in everything he's doing. You kind of feel in good hands when you're watching it. You kind of know no matter how down to the wire the situation gets, Snake is going to get it figured out and come out on top. And I just love Kurt Russell's performance in the film. I love Kurt Russell in general, probably my favorite action star. But Snake Plissken is got to be one of the best characters on screen.
Gotcha.
And just the whole vibe of Escape from New York, the post-apocalyptic New York. He flies in on the paraglider, lands on the Twin Towers, and it's got that wonderful sequence where it almost looks like Tron. It's all digitalized,
right?
Which I think they shot using cardboard cutouts with like neon painted on it.
That's awesome. John Carpenter is just the man.
Yes, he is the man.
He's truly awesome.
As every John Carpenter movie, an amazing score by him.
Yeah, that's right.
Wonderful music.
God, I'd love to. He's one of the people in Hollywood. You have so much respect for a lot of Hollywood directors and just people in Hollywood in general. But you're like, I don't know if I'd want to meet them, never meet your heroes. John Carpenter seems like someone who you would like genuinely get along with.
He doesn't make movies anymore because he smokes pot and plays Xbox all day. Genuinely, that's all he wants to do anymore.
Well, he's cool too because he's kind of critical. The clip I sent you, I don't know if you watched it. I don't know what podcast it is. I'm sorry I can't shut that out. But someone's interviewing him about the horror director's annual dinner, and he's like, yeah, I used to go, George A. Romero, whatever. And then he was like, I went once, and David Cronenberg was a friend of his. And he's like, and I tried to talk to David Cronenberg, but he was like holding court, and he didn't even look at him. And that's when he knew. He's like, all right, I'm done with this stuff. And he's saying, exactly. He's like, all these directors take themselves too seriously.
Carpenter certainly does not.
Carpenter is like just entertainment.
Yes.
But and I would say the best horror movie of all time.
Degree,
The Thing. I think The Thing is the greatest horror movie of all time.
He is 100% a genre director, but I hate the use of like elevated genre, like elevated horror. That is kind of a pretentious thing, but like if there ever was, John Carpenter is a great example of his movies are genre, but they go beyond your typical B movies.
He kind of throws some shade. So he does the Cronenberg thing, and then he's like, now it's all like Eli Roth, all his Hollywood buddies, and then he goes, and Darren Aronofsky, who I think secretly hates horror films.
Wow,
I was like, dang, it's kind of awesome. He's the man.
We'll have to discuss Cronenberg and Carpenter in much more detail with like a better fitting topic.
Right, for sure.
Definitely have a lot.
And to be fair, I love all those. I love Cronenberg. Eli Roth has, one or two.
He has some.
Aronofsky, I think, is great too. So next on my list is Austin Powers, which I think we can both. Three of them. I mean, just fantastic. Yes. Especially the first one, just charming. I love the music in it. Burt Bacharach. The ending, when he's in the Big Boy, Dr. Evil is, it plays the song Carnival by the Cardigans, which Cardigans, fantastic band. And it's just a joy to watch. He took a lot of
well made,
right?
It's very well.
I can't remember the director.
Ian Roach or something Roach.
Yes, Jay Roach.
Jay Roach.
That's right. And what was there's a Giallo film, The Ninth Victim, right?
The 10th Victim.
The 10th Victim. Sorry. That I think a lot of the style was taken from, which is really cool. I need to watch that.
It's very, it's not just a send up of James Bond either. It's just kind of a send up of the whole mod culture of the 60s, like London, which I love. I love that time period, that everything about that culture. It's so vibrant.
Right.
But the movie is like very well made too. The sequence when they're on the double-decker bus in Vegas and Burt Bacharach is performing on the bus.
Signs.
That's such a wonderful sequence.
Truly is. That's what's so comforting about it too. You know what I mean? Like you really feel like you're living in that world.
Yeah, and I don't know, but I feel like that might be a tie back because what's the song he performs there? What the world? Yeah, because that song is played at the ending of Bob, Carol, Ted, and Alice, which I feel like is a huge movie about the 60s, like sex culture.
That's right.
And the ending of that movie is everybody walking out and it plays that song, and it's a wonderful ending. And I feel like that might be. I mean, Burt Bacharach, I know, is kind of just ubiquitous with that era, but could be a little callback to the type of thing they're riffing on.
Right, and I've never seen Casino Royale, not the Daniel Craig one, but the initial
original
one
with Woody Allen.
I think that's probably a huge inspiration as well.
The scene, there's a scene in that one where Peter Sellers is on a bed that's turning around, and he's kind of keeps maneuvering to face the front, which Mike Myers does exactly in Austin Powers, and then obviously too in. What is the second one called?
The Spy Who Shagged Me.
No, Yes, the spy who shagged me. He watches Our Man Flynn in the movie and says it's his favorite movie, which is
awesome.
Just the biggest tip of the hat to what they're kind of taking from.
I think what's so interesting too is International Man of Mystery, the first one, like you said, so incredibly well made, to Goldmember, which is like, it's just like a different time in Hollywood. The beginning is like way overdone. He's watching his own film. But to me, they're all still comforting.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely International Man of Mystery is like a step above all the other ones. And then
the
Goldmember is much more like farcical.
It is.
Like
the other ones turn more to farce, and they kind of lose that wonderful...
The charm.
Yes. Maybe not as well made.
There might be another one being made. Have you heard that? Mike Myers keeps trying to hint at that, which is interesting. I don't have high hopes.
No. After his most recent projects,
the Pentaveret,
the Gong Show reboot. Anybody remember that?
Right. Yeah.
No, I think that was wiped from the internet completely.
But we love Mike Myers here.
We do. We
Huge
are
fans.
Big
Mike heads.
Mm-hmm. And I was just gonna say, while we're on Austin Powers, James Bond, big comfort movies for me as well. We recently watched The Spy Who Loved Me, which I feel like International Man of Mystery pulls from maybe the most.
Really? Okay. I need to rewatch that one.
Obviously, Dr. Evil is supposed to be Blofeld from what's the first? Blofeld's in a lot of them, but I think the first one might be Thunderball. I can't remember, but it's one of the Connery ones.
Okay.
I think Blofeld might be in two of the
What's the one
ones.
where they go to space?
That is Moonraker.
I thought that might have been the first one. But probably not.
With Blofeld. Blofeld's not the villain in Moonraker.
Okay. See, I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna get hate, but
so it's kind of a combination of quite a few of them. But I do feel like The Spy Who Loved Me, especially, it takes a lot from, because in that one, Roger Moore, who my favorite Bond, is so charming, he's so funny in it, and the very end scene, they catch his bosses. I forget what organization he's part of, but they find him having sex at the very end, and they say, "James, what are you doing?" And he says, "Just keeping the British end up, sir."
Yeah, exactly.
And that's so
very cheeky.
Yes, very cheeky, and that's Austin Powers directly. Like, that's exactly what they're riffing off of.
Good stuff. Yeah. Well, I'm sure anybody who watches this, you've seen Austin Powers. And if you haven't, definitely watch at least the first one. It's good. To me, I mean, so many of my films, Nacho Libre, Max Heel's Moving of Heavyweights, and then Austin Powers might not hold up today to some people's standards, but to me, they're comfort films, and I love them. Maybe I saw them at the right time.
Right, exactly.
I mean? Like you were saying, Fast and Furious, kind of, molded you. I would say Austin Powers molded me. Like I just love that. My sense of humor certainly comes from that.
Certainly. It's still funny today. I mean, I just showed my girlfriend the first one a month or two
ago. She hadn't seen them?
No, she'd never seen them.
That's
so we actually watched The Spy Who Loved Me first, and then
you mean The Spy Who Shagged Me?
No.
You're talking about Bond.
We watched the actual, because she had no frame of reference. She had known of the Austin Powers movies, but didn't realize they're riffing on James Bond.
Right.
So I was like, well, I love James Bond. We kind of need to watch one first.
Okay, so maybe some people haven't seen them.
A greater frame of reference for what they're poking fun at, and I do think it gives you more out of Austin Powers when you kind of get what they're referencing. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, what's next for you?
My final one I have here is Heat, Michael Mann's masterpiece, I would say.
It's great.
Yes, fantastic movie. Just this long crime drama spanning multiple characters, very centered, though, by De Niro and Pacino, of course, famously. Their first on-screen performance together. They were obviously in Godfather 2, but in different sections. Different time periods. So it's their first on-screen together. They have that electric moment where they meet at the coffee shop.
The diner,
and they kind of talk about how similar their lives are, as De Niro being the thief, Pacino is the cop who's obsessed with catching him to the point. He loses his family life and everything. Any semblance
chewing scenery, man.
Oh my God,
so
chewing scenery. One of the most coked out performances I think you will ever see in a film.
It's so good.
Genuinely. But I just love how kind of long, it's operatic, honestly. And for a movie like that, another movie kind of like Escape from New York that I feel like is commonly classified as an action movie, but it's really not. It's really a crime drama that just happens.
That opening scene, though.
It is. Well, that's what I was going to say. It's really just a crime drama that happens to have some of the greatest action sequences ever in it.
For sure.
The opening
inspirational.
Scene, yes. The opening scene, the bank shootout, the very famous bank shootout. Another reason I think it connects to me so much is Grand Theft Auto 5, probably my most played game ever, takes truly everything from Heat.
That's awesome.
It literally takes from the opening heist. You do the opening heist in Grand Theft Auto with using the tow truck to knock over a armored car. So it takes so much from that. And I especially love at the end of Heat. I think the ending is just so poetic and so like weirdly beautiful after this just ultra violent, gritty, kind of nasty movie. The ending is, a spoiler alert, Pacino and De Niro holding hands as De Niro dies. Like there's something, it sounds corny saying
but it's done well.
It's done so well. When you watch it, it's like poetic. It truly is. It's like De Niro is dying, Pacino's shot him, and he realizes like he needs that moment of comfort, and they hold hands, and the movie ends. It's playing Moby is the soundtrack.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I know a big thing about that too is obviously big LA movie, but he wanted to do a lot of places that are not seen in movies. So the final shootout takes place at like a runway on the airport, but like behind the runway where all the lights and stuff are. So it's like a very unique location, and there's plenty of that throughout the movie. You know, there's a lot of famous shots that are based on paintings and whatnot, a lot of things that inspired it. But
yeah, we could do a whole episode on Heat, honestly.
On Man, on Man.
Speaking of Man, I'm trying to get better at these segues for my final favorite comfort film. I shouldn't say favorite. Final comfort film. Michael Mann also made Thief, correct, with James Caan.
Yes.
And this director, who you would be kind of surprised was heavily inspired by them, Wes Anderson.
Yes.
Bottle Rocket.
Wes Anderson, heavily inspired by Heat.
Right. Exactly. And that's why he wanted James Caan in Bottle Rocket.
Heat is one of his favorite movies. Yep.
So my final comfort film is Bottle Rocket, Wes Anderson's first film. May not be seen as much as his others, obviously, but it's just fantastic. It's really interesting too. If you're a fan of Wes Anderson and haven't seen it, you should definitely watch it, because you can kind of see like the makings of his style start to culminate, but really it's nothing like any of his other films.
I would say even especially too, if you appreciate Wes Anderson, but you're kind of like me in that the style is kind of like, it gets a bit much sometimes.
I disagree, but yes.
But you know what I mean.
I can understand.
It is. He
you
builds,
either love it or you're indifferent.
Yeah. He builds these fantastical worlds, and he's so ripe for parody because of the way he makes his movies and stylizes them, that you do kind of, I feel like, for me at least, I'm like, okay, I get it. But Bottle Rocket is kind of before he really cemented that style. But you can see the beginnings of it, certainly.
So something interesting too is, and I've seen, it was originally a short film, like 13 minutes, and he used music from Vince Guaraldi's Charlie Brown Christmas, which I love. That's like one of my favorite albums of all time. And James L. Brooks saw it. James L. Brooks, fame from, I guess, produced The Simpsons, right?
Longtime producer, directed Terms of Endearment. What is the Jack Nicholson one? Something's Got to Give.
I think so. But he financed that film after seeing that.
Yep.
So it's so cool to see.
He's a great, what would be the word for it? He's
discovering,
yes, and like helping out young talent.
That have really surpassed even him. It was written by him and Owen Wilson, who lived together at the University of Texas. And I know Owen Wilson is known for so many roles, but this is, in my opinion, his best role as Dignan. He is such a great character. Like, you fall in love with this character. He's such a funny, imperfect character, and he's just like trying so hard to be cool in something that he's not. It's beautifully shot too. I mean, the music, the vibe, Luke Wilson's character. Everybody. I was
going to say Luke Wilson's first movie as well.
And their brother is in it as well. Their other brother is in it for a short period of time. James Caan comes in as like the man that they're all like, dying to meet, and kind of plans this heist that doesn't go so well. An interesting thing too, I don't know if you knew this. So the film came out and it wasn't very successful, and because of that, Owen Wilson almost joined the Marines.
Wow, I did not know
which is crazy.
That.
Yeah, I mean, think about how different our world would be if we hadn't, if Wes Anderson had given up and Owen Wilson had given up, I mean, it'd be a totally different landscape as far as movies goes. But yeah, I mean, there's not too much I can say about it besides, it's very different from Wes Anderson's other films, but it's all the more comforting to me. It's beautiful to see, to know what happened to both of them.
Right.
But to all of them, I mean, Luke Wilson.
But watching that, they deserved it. Like,
exactly.
You're like, you're glad these guys were able to make something from this.
I believe Owen Wilson went on to help him write Royal Tenenbaums as well. So yeah, that's really all I have to say. If you haven't seen it, definitely watch it.
It should be easily accessible, I would think.
Yeah, maybe let's wrap up this episode with 3 film recommendations each from what we've talked about.
The movies we've talked about,
or just in movies in general.
In general, okay.
I'll start if you want.
Yeah.
I'll go with the 3 I mentioned on here. Bottle Rocket, number 1. Number 2, if you're looking for something easy to watch, something to watch with the family, or something for like a hungover day, you're just relaxing at home, Monsieur Hero's Holiday. And then the third one I would say would be, if you're looking for something more obscure, surrealist, if you can find it, Zazie Donsley Metro.
Okay. I would just go Speed if you want to watch something that is just pure enjoyment. You want to have fun watching a movie. Just turn your brain off, watch it. You will be dazzled. It's so much fun, so entertaining. Just edge of your seat the entire time. It does not slow down. It can't, or the bus will explode. It's very, very fast paced, and I think if you appreciate just having a good time watching a movie, you can't go wrong.
It will take you for a ride.
Yes, well put, Nathan. Then I would say,
I would almost go. I was wondering if you'd say Escape from New York. I don't think that's for everybody.
No, that was not going to be one of my recommendations. And especially like if you're getting into Carpenter, I mean that's one of his bigger works, but it is a bit different than it's not horror, which he's most famous for. And I if you like Halloween, if you're a big Halloween fan, I can't say that you're gonna like Escape from New York.
No, watch
they're
Thing,
very
which
different.
I'm sure
The Thing you would appreciate.
Best horror movie ever.
It's more in line with Escape from Precinct 13, which is also
Assault on Precinct.
Assault. Yes, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yes, but if you want to watch something even crazier, Escape from LA is nuts.
And is that also Snake?
Yes. Oh yeah. Snake's back. Carpenter directs.
You like that movie, right?
I kind of do, but it is.
I know it's kind of hated.
Batshit insane. It is just off the wall ridiculous. Whereas the first one is just kind of like effortless. God, I can't say that word today. Effortlessly cool.
Cool. Anything else?
I would just. I mean, Heat. I think everybody should see it. It's fantastic. I think it's one of the great movies of our lifetimes.
Yeah,
strap in. It is a ride. It's slow. It's long. But it's beautiful.
But it's worth it.
It's worth it. It's
absolutely.
worth it. It pays off so amazingly at the end. It's just I think it's a great drama too. It's just such a wonderful interweaving kind of tales of these two guys and the lives they affect by doing what they're doing. I think Michael Mann loves making movies about people that are good at their jobs and like just men that, are kind of driven to the brink by their obsessions. And that's certainly movie fits that bill,
Well, with that, Whiplash too. If you haven't seen it, watch Whiplash.
Yep.
Which you need to watch.
Yes.
Fantastic.
That is a recommendation for me as well.
Cool. Well, I guess that's it then.
All right.
Well, until next time, hope you tuned in. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got some recommendations. Hope you like it. Feel free to leave us any harsh criticisms you can.
Please call us
comments.
Out for being
hope the audio is all right. This is our first shot at this.
Right.
It'll get better over time.
It'll get better.
Trust the process.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. All right. Until